Since 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 have been destroyed through digital disruption. Let me say that again. Since 2000, half of the Fortune 500 have gone because of digital disruption. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes me quite nervous about what happens next. And when we see newspaper articles like this, when the leader of the world's largest advertising agency says that their business is being disrupted by digital, we should sit up and take notice. And when the CEO of Deutsche Bank says that his employees that are working like robots will be replaced by robots, you should also be a little bit scared. I delved deeper into what the CEO of Deutsche Bank said, and I found the interview where he said this, and it's worth having a quick listen to. Let's hear what he said.
When you said that you do have some employees now who are acting as robots,
yes.
How do you think the employees felt about that comment?
I think they know that. And the opportunity that we always talk about internally is upskilling the job, making jobs more satisfying. People who are just mechanically moving paper and numbers around don't have a very fulfilling job, and the career prospects there are not as attractive as they would be if we were able to automate a lot of that production, and then we can add a bit of thinking and a bit of creativity to the role.
How many jobs ultimately, though, do you think are at stake?
It's very hard to say, and that's not avoiding the question, it genuinely is. We need to increase the number of people who face clients and counterparts and external stakeholders, and reduce the number who are focused internally, producing numbers, calculating outputs. For the whole sector, it will be a lot of people over the next 5 to 10 years.
So the question is here, who can predict the future? Who can work out what's going on and actually how we can respond to this? And if you want to predict the future, normally you would employ a futurist. And my favourite futurist is a gentleman by the name of Arthur C. Clarke. He was an English futurist, and he helped predict a number of things. And back in 1974, he was asked by a journalist what life would be like in the year 2001. And this is what he had to say.
Maybe 2001, you're projecting us into the 21st century. I brought along my son Jonathan, who in the year 2001 will be the same age as I am now. Maybe he will be better adjusted to this kind of world that you're trying to portray.
The big difference when he grows up, in fact, if we wanted to wait for the year 2001, is that he will have in his own house, not a computer as big as this, but at least a console through which he can talk to his friendly local computer and get all the information he needs for his everyday life, like his bank statements, his theater reservations, all the information you need in the course of living in a complex modern society. This will be in a compact form in his own house. He'll have a television screen like these here and a keyboard, and he'll talk to the computer, get information from it, and he'll take it as much for granted as we take the telephone.
I wonder though, what sort of a life would it be like in social terms? I mean, if our whole life is built around the computer, do we become a computer-dependent society and computer-independent individuals?
In some ways, but they'll also enrich our society because it'll make it possible for us to live really anywhere we like. Any businessman, any executive could live almost anywhere on Earth and still do his business through a device like this. And this is a wonderful thing. It means we wanted to be stuck in cities, we better live out in the country or wherever we please and still carry on complete interaction with human beings as well as with other computers.
So I think Arthur got pretty right. He predicted we'd have computers in our own homes. It would allow us to work anywhere in the world. He also predicted the societal impacts of how it will change the way we interact with other human beings. I think the only thing he didn't predict was the iPhone 10. But Arthur looked at something 30 years in the future. You haven't got 30 years. You haven't got 30 months. You may not have even 30 weeks to work out what you should do to actually stop this stem of digital disruption. So what you need is a practical futurist, and that's what I am. I'll give you some tips and tricks today that you can go away later this week, early next week, and deploy them in your organisation. So that's what I'm here to do today. But if I'm to talk about digital disruption, you should probably know a bit about my digital credentials. Why have I been asked to talk to you today about disruption and where digital is going? I'm wondering if anyone knows what this is. This is a Sinclair ZX80. It was my first computer back in 1980. They were made here in England. It had 1 kilobyte of RAM and 4K of ROM and a nice squidgy keyboard. And that's how I learned to program, and it got me interested in this whole world of technology. And a few months ago, my daughter Madeline and I went to the Science Museum here in London, and we walked past a glass case, and behind it was the Sinclair ZX80. And Madeline turned to me, she said, "Daddy, isn't that the computer you talk about all the time?" "Yeah." "So if it's behind a glass case in a museum, you must be really old." "Yes, Madeline, I'm really old. I've been doing this for a while." Anyone remember this noise? Yeah. Not so long ago, that's how we dialed up to connect to the internet. And back in 1983, I was dialing up things called bulletin boards and leaving messages, and hours later ringing up to see if my friends had left me a message we would now call email. Now, I knew in 1983 I was hooked because my father had to get a second phone line because I was always dialed up and no one could ever get through. So let's look at why disruption actually happens. I think disruption happens because of 3 interlocking forces. First of all, there are high profits. And that's true in your industry, in financial services generally. And think about the taxi industry. Most taxi companies around the world, there is a barrier to entry. So if someone comes in with an app and can make it really easy, they can extract high profits. Secondly, the technology is there. The fact I can walk into the street, open my phone, it knows where I am, and what I need to do next is click a button and I can get a taxi delivered to where I am. That's amazing. And thirdly, consumer demands. Now, for years, we've been able to select the seat on the aircraft we're about to fly on. And more recently, in a Hilton hotel like this, I've been able to pick the room that I want to stay in. And now I can use the Hilton app to unlock the door of my hotel room, completely bypassing check-in. Guess what? I'm not going to stay in another hotel chain that doesn't offer that level of service because I'm used to being able to choose my room and unlock the door and save half an hour at the check-in queue. So let's look at some of the disruptors and see what's made them tick. Now, one you may not think about, but probably is very evident, is Amazon. Amazon have been around for 20 years. Their share price has grown by 66,000% since they launched 20 years ago. And in researching this whole notion of disruption and trying to find some really good examples, I came across an interview with Warren Buffett earlier this year. Now, Warren Buffett's a smart man. People like to follow his stock recommendations. And he was asked at his Berkshire Hathaway retreat earlier this year why he didn't buy Amazon. Let's have a listen to what he said.
With Amazon, he said, we needed the internet. Somebody else spent billions of dollars developing it, but it wouldn't have worked without the internet. He said we needed transportation. Somebody else had already built railroads and UPS and all of that sort of thing. And he said we needed payment systems. That would take billions of dollars to build, but that had already been done by Visa and all along the line. So he took 3 huge requirements where the other guys had spent the money, and then he combined them in a way that he didn't have to spend the money. It's brilliant. I give him great credit for it.
You have talked extensively over the last several days, even the last several months, about how Jeff Bezos is the best business leader you think we have right now in the United States, about how Amazon is a brilliant company. And now you're talking about how it's one of 5 companies that take no capital to continue to build. How come you don't buy shares of Amazon?
Stupidity. I was impressed with Jeff early. I never thought he could pull off what he did. And what's really, I mean, I thought he could pull off something, but on the scale that has happened, I mean, it's changed your behavior, you know, it's changed everybody in the office's behavior. And the remarkable thing about Jeff, and everything else, is he's done it in 2 industries almost simultaneously that really don't have that much connection. I've never seen any person develop 2 really important industries at the same time and really be the operational guy in both. And he's done a good job with the Washington Post on the side, just on it personally. But here you take cloud services. I mean, there was a Charlie Rose show on this that he did 3 or 4 months ago. He thought he would have 2 years of runway. He got 7 years. You do not want to give Jeff Bezos a 7-year head start
before the competitors jumped in
any
on cloud
economic race.
services.
So at the same time he's shaking up the whole retail world, he's also shaking up the IT world simultaneously, and I take my hat off to him.
You don't want to give Jeff Bezos 7 years of runway. You don't want to give anyone 7 years of runway. So while Amazon might be not a company you thought of as a disruptor, they're actually in the fabric of most of our lives, and we buy things, and they've actually shaped the way things happen. So I want to look at some other disruptors. And I've been doing this talk for a couple of years on disruption. I've been reporting and writing on disruption for the last 5 years. And I've been using the same sort of examples. And in the spirit of disrupting ourselves, a couple of weeks ago, some feedback from the audience said, can you use some new examples? So I thought, I'm going to disrupt myself. I need to find other examples that aren't the usual ones. So I'm not going to talk about the world's largest taxi company that owns no vehicles. That's been done. But they're in a bit of trouble here in London. They're in the middle of about to lose their license. But Uber have litigation built into their business model, so they'll be okay. I won't tell you the world's largest accommodation provider owns no real estate, because we all know who that is, but they are now impacting long-term rentals in London. It's making it harder to buy or rent apartments in London. And also, I saw this tweet the other day, I had to laugh. The Financial Times tweeted, Airbnb is partnering with real estate developer to build its own branded apartments. Someone called them out, this is a hotel, you're building a hotel. So it's interesting how they are disrupting. I want to talk about some new disruptors, some that you will have heard of and some that you should have heard of. Who here has heard of Lemonade? A few people. Good, this is a good start. Okay, why I like Lemonade is because they just make life simple. Those of you that don't know about Lemonade, here's a quick clip on how they do it. So you'll all have your own opinions on what Lemonade does well or does not so well, and that's fair. But from the person not from your industry, I see they take out a lot of friction points in actually finding insurance and buying it, and then also claiming. There are friction points, and they are based on an app. Okay, let's try another disruptor, Trove. Who's heard of Trove? Fewer hands, that's good. Trove helps with the problem of short-term insurance. This is how they do it.
I'm leaving my house now. And as I step outside, all of these things with me are fully insured against loss or damage, instantly. That trick I just showed you, that's Trove. Trove is smart insurance. Unlike blanket policies that cover everything at once, Trove helps me protect just the things I care about. All I have to do is swipe to protect. So if anything happens, just about anything you can imagine, I know my camera's covered. Trove makes it easy to file a claim through the app. I just answer these questions, and Trove handles the rest. And every time I leave my house, things like my laptop and phone are protected. Trove puts me in control of the things I care about, and that's really smart.
Now again, Trove reduces friction points, and for the younger leaders in our room, this is probably something you're going to be a lot more comfortable using. So while you may say that won't work in our organisation, it's live in Australia with Suncorp, here with AXA, and it's going to the US very soon. So this is going to start disrupting because people want to buy insurance that way. Final example, Atom Bank. Who's heard of Atom? Fewer, I would expect. They're a UK app-only bank. They have no branches, it's just an app. So, cool idea, but disruption's hard. And Atom and others have faced the problem that because they have no branches and they're a lot smaller, they are being told by the regulators you've got to appear and act like a bigger bank. And so these lenders are saying we're not going to offer the sort of standard account, the everyday sort of savings account, because we have to have liquidity like a big bank and we haven't got that. So here's some things you can take away. As an industry, you obviously have connections with people that regulate you. And I think part of the challenge with disruption is you need to have the regulators on side. You need them to know why it is you want to disrupt and help them through. Years ago in Australia, I've disrupted lots of companies. I used to be at Telstra, which is a large telco in Australia. And every now and then we'd have to get a non-disclosure agreement, and it would take 3 or 4 days. And I would go to the lawyers and I'd say, hello, Business Prevention Department, can I please have an NDA? It'll take 3 days. Why is it going to take 3 days? When I sat down and explained to them, the faster they could get me these NDAs, the throughput of the deals that we're looking at could increase. They went, oh, okay, we can help you there. We can do it in 3 hours. So think about sitting down with the regulator and explaining to them why you and your customers want to do things in a different way. The other thing that's going to disrupt you is this thing called the gig economy. And when we hear this name and we look at the photographs, we think of Deliveroo and Uber Eats. Here's a fact for you. For every $10 that's spent on Uber, $1 is spent on food delivery. So 10% of their market is food delivery, not just transportation. The gig economy isn't all just about people delivering food. It's about a new way of working. It's about a new place of working. So you're going to see that people will start to offer their services like consultants, like this company, Blue Matter, where people like myself that are independent consultants can rent their time to your organisation for a period of time. The old ways, you go to McKinsey and BCG and others and you pay a lot of money and you get some great advice, but this whole gig economy might mean that some of your employees don't want to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. They want to actually rent some of their time to you on their schedule. So I think the gig economy is going to start to disrupt every business, not just yours. But you're not alone. Whole industries are being disrupted. I came across this excellent report from Deloitte in Australia where they looked at different industries. Along the bottom was the time frame, and the vertical axis is how quickly are they going to be disrupted, what's the impact. The top left is the interesting quadrant. They call it short fuse, big bang. Let's look at who's in there. Real trade, ICT, finance. Okay, we're all represented here. The scary thing about that slide, though, is it's from 2012. It's already happened. 5 years ago, they predicted that this would happen, and it's already happening. So I think you see there's a theme here. But often when we talk about disruptions, people say that's a negative word. Why would you not talk about transformation or innovation? I think you can use the words interchangeably. I like using disruption because it gives you a sense of urgency. Something is happening that is not good. Innovation is great also, where you can take existing products and services and build on and add to them. But sometimes I think you just got to disrupt and disrupt yourself in terms of what you're doing. But to disrupt yourself, I think you also have to have in your firms what I like to call digital diversity. This is diversity of thought and diversity of thinking around all things digital. And I'm a big proponent that on your boards, you should have not 1 but 2 non-exec directors that have a digital mindset. Not building a digital board like this, but one like this. So they can see things through a digital lens. Why I say 2 is if you have one person on the board, oh, Andrew's just the digital guy, what does he know? I know 100 people in London today that could sit on your boards. They know about governance, they know about controls, they know about hiring and firing, and they see things through a digital lens. What pains me is I hear about boards that do the study trip to the west coast of America. They go to Google and Facebook and Twitter, and they come back saying, yeah, we're going to be a digital company. And then it becomes the status quo. The next board meeting is dealing with all the stuff that's happened, and it kind of gets forgotten. If you have a digital director or directors on your boards, they can't but help see your business, see your industry through a digital lens. And part of that is thinking a bit like a startup. Now, I've run 6 startups over 12 years. I know what it's like. And I get upset when I see large organisations say, you've got to think like a startup, and they've never worked in one. Being in a startup is hard. You've got no money, you're shipping products that are not always ready, and you're breaking rules. And the Ubers and the Airbnbs and the Lemonades and the Troves all started life breaking these rules before they started being regulated. So here's some things you can actually do to start thinking like a startup. You want small innovation teams. It might mean stopping something and putting some money towards building these innovation teams that can see, how do we accelerate the products we've got? How do we go and talk to the consumer? How do we build things in a rapid way? How do we become more like a Lemonade or a Trove to service our clients, because it's all going the way of the app? You need to have a collaboration culture. I'm sure many of you have apps like Slack or Yammer or Chatter, and you communicate between companies. I used to sell those services for a living, and 9 times out of 10 people would say, oh, we had that, but it didn't quite work. It didn't work because you need a culture of collaboration. Your value to an organisation isn't what you know, it's what you share. And in your organisation, cross-organisation, cross-industry, collaboration will be the key to rapid innovation and being able to disrupt yourself. Everyone talks about agile. Those in the room that have a software background know that agile software development means you run 2-week sprints and you do things very quickly. And I talked about this in an executive MBA course a couple of years ago. I explained the difference between waterfall methodology, where you do things and then you wait, and agile, where it's done very quickly. And the group couldn't get their head around it. You mean you work for 2 weeks, and if it doesn't work, you've wasted 2 weeks. But with the old way, you do it for 2 years, and you work out the billing system isn't working, and you waste 2 years. Queen Victoria famously held her staff meeting standing up. When she had her meeting every Thursday or every morning, she would have her team stand up because there were no chairs. Think about the next meeting you have, the difference if you didn't have chairs there. If people had to stand up and report and be very uncomfortable for 15 or 20 minutes, and they go off and do what they're supposed to be doing. So I challenge you, the next meeting, take the chairs out. What's that? This crazy Australian in London at ICMIF said, you've got to take the chairs out of the room. We'll start doing something different. And I applaud organisations like Barclays. They've set up a network of innovation hubs called RISE, and this is the one in Shoreditch. Basically, they've built a place where startups can go and collaborate. They pay the standard rate per month to rent desks, as you would in a WeWork or a Regis. But Barclays get first view of these exciting companies. They can see who the movers and shakers are. And I'm happy to say that Aviva have done the same thing here with a digital garage, and that looks probably very different to some of your work environments. That's also going to attract the young leaders. The young leaders in the room, the 55 of you, you have a great array of choice where you want to work. And the Googles and the Amazons and the Ubers and the Airbnbs and the Lemonades all want to snap you up. And so it sometimes is about where I'm working and who I get to work with that'll actually make me make that decision. Now, I've got through a whole presentation without mentioning the M word, millennials, of which there are 55 or so in the room. I love millennials because you actually challenge our thinking. You give us diversity of thought. You have a great lot of digital thinking. I'm in two minds about whether millennials get a bad rap or they're actually over promoted. But the other day I saw this LinkedIn post and it got me thinking. This person said that he's amazed how many applications I received from university graduates looking for their first ever job. I don't know about you, but I had 4 or 5 or 6 jobs before I left university. It meant that I got used to what it was like working in a team for money, and that I wasn't as brilliant as I thought I was, and I wasn't amazing. I was just doing a job and I had to fit in with everyone else. But you can harness the difference in these teams. Korn Ferry a couple of years ago looked at the leaders that you're going to need for the future, and they put them into 2 camps. First of all, the going digital. Much of this room's represented. You know how to get things done. You can write a board paper. You can influence at the highest levels. But your digital skills are on the way up. Then there's the born digital, of which our future leaders are representatives. They are born with the iPhone in the mouth. They know how digital works. They require an app to do anything, but don't have the experience in managing at the senior levels and influencing. But the 2 tribes need each other. The 2 tribes can work together to support your business's objectives, and you need to use them in every example. So I applaud what ICMIF have done to bring the young leaders here, but do more of it. Don't have them off to the side, have them at the board meeting. I've taken millennials to client meetings to grow that diversity of thought, and clients have gone, wow, we've seen a different side to your organisation because you're giving us a range of opinions. My mantra, though, is that to get digital, you've got to be digital. You've got to play with this stuff. And I'm going to throw a whole lot of buzzwords at you now. And I did this a couple of weeks ago at another insurance conference, and this was the most photographed slide of the event. These buzzwords are going to or will impact your industry in 2 years. And if any of those don't make sense, that's okay. Go to Wikipedia, do some research, find out what they are and what they mean to your organisation. 2FA. Everyone knows what 2FA is? Shame on you. Two-factor authentication. The hacks that are happening with Yahoo and with Equifax are happening because of social engineering. People that work for you are being tricked into giving their passwords away. And so two-factor authentication, like when you're doing your banking, every single service I have from Twitter to Facebook to my blog to everything has two-factor on it. Because I know that I could get hacked. I only know that because I've played with this stuff. I was inquisitive saying, I'm reading about all this security stuff, I should start playing with it. Yesterday was announced that the wireless encryption called WPA2 had been hacked. That should worry you. Because people now, even though you're encrypted, can actually read what you're doing. You're on a wireless network right now that's WPA2 encrypted. If I was a hacker, and I've seen people do this from stage, I could actually be looking at everything you're looking at right now. Play with this stuff so you know what the threats are. Let's look at one of the blockchain. Now, many people think blockchain is just about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. But if I tell you that blockchain is actually a distributed ledger, then you're going to say that changes everything. One version of the truth that's secure around the world, and I can do smart contracts, that's smart. And I think blockchain and its derivatives are really going to enhance your industry in a number of ways. And here's a real example. Those of you in Europe will know about a thing called GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation. It comes into effect next year, and it is frightening the pants off people. In fact, there's a great cartoon. My favourite cartoonist, Tom Fishburne, writes marketing cartoons. He's just done a UK book tour, and he wrote this cartoon yesterday. Why do you get that look whenever we talk about GDPR compliance? It's about data protection. But I see it not as a threat or a hassle. I see it as an opportunity. Because guess what? All these networks out there, this is the value that they see from having our data. I've not seen a cent of that. I'd like just a cut of my LinkedIn value. And this is what I think will happen fairly soon. When I say this at advertising conferences, I get booed off the stage. I don't look at ads. I have ad blockers. I don't like advertising. But I think what's going to happen, and GDPR might be the start to this, I'm allowed to go to all the organisations and ask for the information that you have on me. Let's assume I go to my bank, HSBC, and I say, I don't type it because I've now got a digital agent. I'm saying, okay, I want you to go and find all the relationships I've got within the last 3 months, all the last 3 months of purchase. Okay, it comes across. I then give my digital agent, which is artificially intelligent, permission to go off and do deals. And it knows that my insurance is about due. So my digital agent does a deal with your digital agent to basically say, what deals have you got? And within a threshold, it does it automatically. But your digital agent says, hey, if you give us a bit more information, we can give you a better deal. I think what will happen is consumers will hold much more of their own information, and you will be able to use that. So I see things like GDPR as an opportunity, not a threat. So, a few things for next week. Learn up the lingo. Have a look at some of these great startups out there that are doing interesting things. Start to challenge the way you make decisions and who is making the decisions, and make sure you see it through a digital lens. And importantly, disrupt, or you'll be disrupted. Thank you very much.